Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, we're going to be talking about communication, about how to make sure your employees, are happy. That's really important. And so many businesses think, I can find somebody else. Not a big deal. So please join me in welcoming an expert in this field, Ann Sullivan, to our program today. Welcome, Ann.
Thanks so much, Deb. I really appreciate it. I had to laugh when you said make people happy in your workplace, because when I first started doing this 10 years ago, a little over 10, 11 now, I guess, when I said, my original presentation was called Work Happier, and people are like, happy? What's that have to do with work?
We're not productive. We have to be productive.
Yeah, I've had some experiences like that. It's like, no, they do go together, but whatever.
Right.
We're educators,
yes,
right?
And they're definitely not mutually exclusive. You can be
Absolutely
happy and productive.
Actually, you're more productive when you're happier.
Most definitely.
I actually had a tax partner, my other life was as an accountant. And I had a tax partner once say to me, you're obviously not working hard enough because you have too good of an attitude.
You're like, no.
I went back to my cubicle and went, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, this is not the place for me. Right?
Yeah, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I made a plan. Perfect.
I love it. Well, speaking of plan, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll really jump into this because it is so important. So Ann Sullivan, the queen of culture, is the founder of Learning Never Ends, whose mission is to change the world to better communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, one person at a time. Her diverse background gives her a unique perspective as a business culture expert. She earned a BA in psychology, an MBA in accounting, earning the designation of CPA. Boy, that's pretty diverse, right? She is an international best-selling author, and her current book is titled Catalysts of Culture: How Visionary Leaders Activate the Employee Experience. She is also host to Mere Mortals Unite and Businesses That Care podcasts. When Ann is not speaking, training, coaching, or podcasting, she lives in Pittsburgh with her wonder dog, Joy. So again, Ann, welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry Joy's not here today. Otherwise, I'd have her say hello as well.
Perfect. I love it. My cats are wandering around, and Joy should sometime meet one of my dogs, Diva. And Diva is. Isn't it funny when we give them appropriate names?
And Joy is. Yeah, I named her Joy so that I would have a four-legged walking positive affirmation every day, right? Because I wake up to joy, I come home to joy, I walk with joy, I feed my joy.
Yep. And that is something, it's funny, we were talking before the program, that is something we need to do. We need to look for the positives in life. We need to, if we have to, create them by naming our dogs appropriately.
Right.
Children, or, whatever. But let's go, I mentioned, and you talked about the fact in your bio that you were an accountant by trade, which is pretty brain heavy type of work. And now you kind of switched to that other side of your brain. How is it that you got to where this is your passion in life?
Well, my undergraduate degree was in psychology, and once I graduated from there, I made a decision to deliberately learn about human behavior, either my own or the people around me, every day. And when I say deliberate, that's really important, because everything we're going to talk about only changes when you make deliberate choices. And so now I have a plethora of information on how people act and react. With that, degree, I moved to a ski resort and became a maid, because that's what you do with
Right.
with a
Mhm.
psychology degree.
Mhm.
And then my last job in that ski resort was a bookkeeper, and I thought it
Hmm.
was fun. It was like a puzzle.
Wow.
That's when I came back and got my
Mhm.
MBA
Mhm.
in accounting, held a lot of different positions in
Mhm.
accounting, and basically finally understood how businesses run as an
Mm.
operation.
Mhm.
When I didn't want to learn any more about accounting, I knew I had to leave that
Mhm.
profession, because you got to keep learning no matter
Right.
what you do, right?
Mhm.
And I realized that I had a very unique perspective on business. I understood how businesses run, and
Mhm.
I had a very good grasp of human behavior.
Mhm.
At the same time, employee engagement became a phrase.
Right.
And that grew into the employee
Mhm.
experience, which grew into culture. And it was just a perfect fit for me. So I've
Mhm.
followed that train. I'm still a research freak. I like to read. I
Mhm.
like to learn. That's why I started my podcast,
Mhm.
Businesses That Care,
Mhm.
where I talk to C-suite leadership about cultures that award-winning cultures that they already
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
And that's what's in the book.
Right.
It's not
I'm gonna
ideas.
Vanna.
It's there. Thank you. Thank you. It's not just ideas that I
Right.
have.
Mhm.
It is actual strategies that work,
Mhm.
that everyone can take into their own company
Mhm.
or adjust and tweak so that it fits their company.
Right.
And I've talked to over 60 of those leaders
Mhm.
now, all sizes, all industries,
Mhm.
all types of longevity.
Right.
And I found 4 attributes that were the same in all of them.
Mhm.
And that's what I speak about
Mhm.
and write about. And that's where I'm at.
Right. And I love the book, and here I'll Vanna again.
Thank you.
And it is the highlights and kind of transcripts of some of your interviews, and so it was
I
interesting
had to
because
pick
yeah,
14, which
I
was
know that's the hard
hard.
part. Yeah, figuring out which ones and why you want to highlight them, because I'm sure it tied back into the 4 tactics that you mentioned, and we'll discuss. But it was fun because it's their words, as to why they're doing what they're doing.
Well,
Got a frog in my throat.
I'll
Mhm.
let you in on a little secret. When I first started writing the book,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, I'll include their transcripts,
Mhm.
my brain went, "Ooh, that's cheating," right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Then if anyone's ever taken a recording
Mhm.
and tried to make it
Mhm.
readable,
Oh. Mm.
I realized that was not cheating at
Mhm.
all.
Most
So it's
definitely.
interesting what your brain does
Mhm.
to you, right?
Right.
Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't use it. But
Mhm.
I could never, when I started to want to write and review, do an overview of
Mhm.
what they said, I like the idea of bringing those people's
Mhm.
personalities.
Right.
As you read it, I'm sure you can
Mhm.
tell each
Mhm.
one, they're different people.
Oh, yes. Mhm. Right. And I loved it because they were talking about how they got where they were, what worked, what didn't. I mean, there were definitely places where they talked about, "Yeah, this did not work." And and what really impressed upon me was it's not rocket science in a lot of cases. It's
Mm.
some basic things. It also, doesn't have to just apply to a company. It could be that, you are a volunteer leader,
Oh, yeah.
or if some of it even in your families, because at its heart, it's
It's
about
universal.
communication, right? Communication, caring for other people, all of these things which we should be doing anyway. But to see how businesses do it, and you mentioned in the book, small businesses, large businesses, doesn't really matter. It's just in the implementation of it, and consistency. That was one of the things you talked about several times, is
Oh, yeah.
you have to be consistent. So tell us, you mentioned that there were 4 things that you discovered. So what are those 4 things, and then we'll really delve into this.
Okay. Well, actually, I've created a new acronym,
Hmm.
and I now call it the power of more. You know
Hmm.
how you write something and then it
Right.
morphs.
Hmm.
Now it's the power of more,
Mhm.
and each letter stands for something.
Okay.
M is for mastery, and
Mhm.
that goes along with lifelong learning,
Mhm.
not only for leadership, but for everyone in your company.
Mhm.
O is for open-mindedness. It's very important to be open to new
Mhm.
ideas, see different perspectives
Mhm.
because they exist.
Right.
You can't successfully go through life thinking, oh, my way of looking at the
Mhm.
world is how everyone
Mhm.
else is looking at
Right.
the world. That's just trouble.
Mhm.
The R is for reconnection,
Mhm.
and that has to do with connecting by disconnecting.
Mhm.
And it's based in listening, which most
Right.
people never get any
Mhm.
training on. And it is a larger part of a
Mhm.
conversation than even the words you use, which again, that's another focus I have in communication, is
Mhm.
that words matter. And then the E is for environment,
Mm.
both physically and
Mhm.
emotionally. And as we go forward in the life of a workplace, that's going to become even more
Mhm.
important. And we just saw not too recently Boeing, what
Mhm.
happened at Boeing
Right.
when people knew things were not
Mhm.
working, but weren't in an
Mhm.
environment where they felt they could
Right.
speak up.
Right.
And there's been
They
plenty of those
Mhm.
examples, but
Right.
that's the
Mhm.
newest one.
Right. Yeah. They knew that if they said, "Excuse me, there's something wrong with this big
There
plane,"
would be some kind of
yeah,
reprimand.
yeah, they would have no longer had a job. And which is
And
this
that may have not been true, but at
right.
least they
Mhm.
thought it.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yep.
issue.
Right. And obviously what we're talking about is corporate culture. And it is one of those, terms that gets bandied about, even 20 years ago when I worked in corporate America, we talked about our culture and all of those things. And so many times I think, especially the higher ups, it's not important. We don't care. We just want people to come and do their job. All of these various things. And then they wonder, why do we have so much turnover?
Oh, yeah. And
Why,
you know how costly that is?
oh, yeah.
Research
Hmm.
tells us that
Hmm.
for every person you
Hmm.
replace, it costs you at least
Hmm.
150% of their
Right,
salary.
right. Because there's a gap in work being done. You have to train them, all of those various things.
Well,
And
and there's another part of it too that's not money.
hmm.
It's the what I call ROR,
Hmm.
return on
Right.
relationships.
Hmm.
And that's with their fellow workers
Hmm.
and colleagues, and especially with your clients and
Right.
customers.
Hmm.
They don't like new people.
No, no,
They
they
like
get
someone
used to
who's
this
going to ask
person. Hmm.
about their daughter's
Hmm.
wedding that they
Hmm.
knew about.
Right, right. And I think so many companies figure we can replace somebody pretty easily at all levels. I mean, it's
Not
not just,
anymore.
yeah, and I think it's, and as I said, I mean, we've been talking about this a long time, but I think some, they give it lip service. When I was in corporate America, we had, we talked
Your
about
mission
culture a lot.
statement, your
Yes.
values, and then
And
you didn't
and we did
internalize
team
them.
building, and all of these various things. And that was
Order.
great until things started going wrong.
Right.
And then that stopped. I mean, that was when communication stopped. That was when
And
everybody,
that's when it needs to be at its
I
highest
know.
level.
Yep. Yeah. We if we saw a management person on our floor, it was like, oh no, no, they're coming for me.
Right.
And mhm,
And right now with the coronavirus, I
mhm,
say this is an
right.
opportunity for people to step up in
Mhm,
their workplace culture. This
right.
is a time to have
Mhm,
communication at the highest
mhm,
level and talk about ideas that you think are obvious.
right.
Because what's obvious to you
Mhm,
isn't necessarily
mhm,
obvious to other people,
right.
like staying home when you're
Mhm,
sick.
mhm. Right, and that is so true because so many people is, and obviously it depends on what's being done. I mean,
Of course.
but for the most part, if for many things, somebody, if you can work remotely, which
Right.
that's great, or somebody else could do your job. I mean, there's other things, but people are very worried about that. If
Well,
for, mhm,
I'm sorry, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, but first they're thinking, okay, if I don't go in and they discover someone else can do my job, then they don't need me. And then of course there's the flip side of the managers. Well, if they're working from home, they're not really working.
And you know what? The research shows just the
Right. Mm-hmm.
opposite. And what you said for the first idea, that's a problem in trust and
Mm-hmm.
communication if people are worried
Right.
about that. But one of the suggestions I made to businesses where people can't uh, work
Mm-hmm.
remotely, it's like a fire, right? It's why
Mm-hmm.
you have fire drills.
Right.
It's easier to know what to
Mm-hmm.
do,
Mm-hmm.
not wait until you have a fire.
Mm-hmm.
What about asking other employees
Right.
who would be willing to
Mm-hmm.
work a little more if
Mm-hmm.
someone can't come in?
Right.
That way you'd know that ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I can call on these 4
Mm-hmm.
people if someone can't be
Right.
doing their job
Mm-hmm.
and they'd be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know ahead of time instead of scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people say, well, I'm not going to pay people if they don't come to work. Well, if your entire business shuts down, isn't that
Right.
more
Mm-hmm.
expensive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and or even just slows down. Yeah, it's going to cost you far more. And we don't want employees going to work when they're sick or when they even think they might be
Ever.
sick. Yeah.
Forget about the
Yeah.
coronavirus.
Oh yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, and because it spreads, that's the whole thing. That's why in schools you've got the little 5-year-olds that get sick and get sick and get sick. That's because other little 5-year-olds are there who are sick.
I went to have my hair cut the other day, and the lady who was cutting my hair said somebody came in with their kid and said, oh yeah, Johnny's not feeling good today, has a fever, so I had to keep him home from school. And she's thinking, why is he here for a
Right.
haircut? I'm
And
in
they're
his
going,
face. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Why'd you bring him in here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, of course, that is an issue for parents, childcare, and yeah.
Absolutely. People
Mm-hmm.
have to go to work. This is about having a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective and being open to new ideas. Just because, let's say you're in a job where you don't get paid unless you go to work.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do for those people, right? To keep
Mm-hmm.
everyone safe.
Right.
You have to think about that, because there are, even though it may not be true for you, for many millions of people, if they miss a day's work, they can't pay their rent.
Right. And and it's funny that you mentioned the fact that because of coronavirus we're starting to have these conversations. They should have been conversations all along.
Exactly.
What happened,
So
because
it's an opportunity.
Yeah, weather is obviously, doesn't matter where you are in the country, weather could shut you down, or anywhere in the world. There could be another bug that goes through. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why we should have been having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Planning is it makes change a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of work in change management also. And, barring something that changes in a moment, right?
Right.
Having a plan just creates such a much better atmosphere for successful change.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And successful change is so much easier on the pocketbook and the emotional stability of everyone in a company, and what the company's goal is, whatever kind of service or product they're putting out there. If you have successful change, that rolls along. If you don't, that gets affected in a multitude of ways.
Right. And it's funny because we've all worked for companies who don't care about us. That we're the number, we're replacement.
It is getting less.
Yeah, I know. I worked for, and actually if I think about it, so many years ago, I worked for Hughes Aircraft, and we literally were known by our ID numbers. And if I thought about it, I actually could probably remember what that was, even though that's been like 30 years ago, because that's what you put on everything. You didn't put your name, you put your, now obviously.
Was that a security thing?
partially, but I think some of it was more just, and it certainly wouldn't have been easier because they were long, they were like 6-digit numbers. So it was kind of hard to remember. Deb would have been a lot easier. But, but people, you worked with people and you call them by your names, but yeah, we were that employee number, and that was what you put on everything. And, and they didn't care in the slightest about us because they really did think they're replaceable. We don't care,
But you know what, Deb, at that time, you were more replaceable.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's an employee's market. It's not an employer's market.
Oh,
and our pool, right, the birth rate went down for the 4th year in a row.
Right.
People can make money doing video games at home. Anyone with a computer can get on YouTube and have a business. And if they're really good, they can have a successful business.
Right.
There's a lot there. You can get a degree now in entrepreneurship. People are learning how to be their own bosses.
Right.
There are a lot of environmental ideas going around right now, and actions that are happening that are making the employee pool shrink.
Right.
There are less people that will apply for jobs and a less good talent that will apply for jobs.
Right. And the employee knows that they have great skills that can probably transfer somewhere else.
Exactly.
So,
they're on Glassdoor.
Right. And they don't really care. I mean, long gone are the days where somebody even worked somewhere for longer than a couple of years, let alone their career. And it's funny because we always, say, ew, millennials are the cause of this. That's great. It's a benefit to everyone that millennials are saying, no, I can take my skills elsewhere. I can, I work best at home at midnight in my pajamas. All of these various things. And because it goes out to all of us, because, well, maybe I work best at night in midnight in my pajamas.
I think that millennials I love millennials because I had a pre-existing millennial mindset back in the day. Millennials came out and said, I want you to care about us. Who doesn't want that?
Right.
I always tell my audiences, for the boomers who don't like that, they're only angry because they didn't think of it themselves.
We're jealous.
Millennials are very hard workers. My son works for an incredible company that takes good care of him. And honestly, he's going to stay there forever as long as they keep taking care of him.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't want to bounce around.
No.
His fiance, though, she just switched jobs. Why? Because she worked at a company who did not ask her or have a conversation with her about what she did and what she liked to do best, which is what she does best. And she got offered another job where she could do what she does best. They lost a valuable employee because they never had a conversation because they're a very old school type of company.
And as you mentioned that fans out from there because the people that she worked with are now probably having to, at least for a little bit, take over her job duties. So they're annoyed. And they were thinking, well, I'm not going to ask for anything because, it might not go well. It's very
Or on
rarely.
the other hand, they may be thinking, hey, if she could leave, maybe I could too.
This is true. Yeah.
That happens when somebody exit, other people go, I guess I don't have to be stuck in this environment either.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is one of the things, we do, and it is a little bit different now, but we did think we were stuck there. We couldn't go elsewhere for a variety of reasons. We were told that, my generation was definitely one of those that you should go to work for a company and stay there forever because my parents did that.
Again, it was an employer market then. So there were other forces that came into play.
Yep. And that was what was expected of us.
Absolutely.
And when if you started doing the job hopping thing, it was thought of as a negative.
Absolutely.
And now you look at it and it's like, okay, they're going somewhere to get better skills.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think it's that we're jealous. That's why, I'm like, well,
I'm not, because I've always thought this
I
way.
know, and it's fun because I interview millennials on this program. So of course they're they're very professional, all these various things. And I love talking to them because they're definitely part of that power of more that you talk about. Because one of the things I've really discovered with millennials is the lifelong learning. They're like little sponges. They just want to learn more and more and more. Even if it's not something that's going to pertain to what they're doing, they just want to learn more.
I got to say, though, and I do say this when I have presentations that I do, that this whole big marketing campaign about the differences between the generations, and I'm sure I have friends that make a lot of money doing that, but I really think that's what it is a marketing campaign, because no matter what generation you're talking about, they're not all like anything.
Right. Yeah.
I think that each generation came into the workplace as each individual does, with their own story. And unless you care enough to delve into what that story is, you will never understand that person. I don't care if they take what assessment they take. It's the relationship, that one-on-one relationship with people, working with them, asking questions, that you can discover who they are. I have a really simple exercise I do, and people fill out a piece of paper with questions like, if you were a car, what car would you be? If you were a time of day, what time of day would you be? And when I get people to answer that, someone might say the afternoon, and somebody might say 2:12.
Right.
That tells me that one person needs more detail than another person. There are different ways, just by asking questions and being intuitive and really listening and watching how people react, that you can learn about them.
Right.
And like I said, millennials may have stepped up and said, you need to care for us. Who doesn't want to be cared for?
Right. Yeah. And of course, one of the things that bosses, managers, whoever will tell me is, but that takes so much time, and I don't want to know about their personal life. Well, you're not getting every detail. It's just, you're learning enough that's appropriate for work to be able to manage them well and have a great team. And so, part of that is, and then of course we have HR issues, and so, but
well, you're not asking them about their underwear.
Right. But, it's good to know, okay, they have 2 little kids. So we might have to be more flexible with their schedule. Now, obviously,
and you can do that by just asking, if we had a family picnic, would you be interested?
Right. Or keeping your eyes open. They might have pictures in their cubicle.
Yes. Just paying attention.
Right. And so you're not crossing the legal boundaries.
Exactly.
Saying, and when are you going to get pregnant?
Yeah.
All of those things. But I think maybe that is part of it, is people think, well, there's so many things we can't talk about, so we're not going to talk about any of it.
Well, I've got to say that probably 85% of my coaching is on communication. And people, what I have found is that, you were talking before about a lot of what's in the book and and what I speak about and my research isn't rocket science. And I have found that a lot of times people don't know what words to use to act and react with other people. So they just don't.
Right.
And I went into one company and we made like a rubric of each person and the best way they like to communicate. Was it by text? Was it by a phone call? Was it by email? Was it by come by my office? And the leadership team was shocked to learn that different people prefer Bob over there. They were sending emails to, and he doesn't look at any of these emails until 4 o'clock. right? And so he wants you to come by his office.
Mm-hmm.
Just by doing this
Mm-hmm.
small rubric
Mm-hmm.
for the leadership team made everything more efficient.
Right. And it's funny because it initially takes more time to figure out, okay, I need to send a text to this person, an email to this person, and I need to stop and talk to this person. But in the long run, because you're
You make it a
communicating
sign
better,
and you hang it up.
yeah, you're doing smoke signals, whatever. In the long run, everybody's communicated with more efficiently and better.
Absolutely.
When you have to send the email 5 times and then finally go in and say, Bob, okay, you wasted a whole lot of time. If you knew, okay, Bob wants a text, that would have been a heck of a lot faster.
Exactly. And the amount of time it took to find that out in a leadership meeting was about 5 minutes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that comes back to, kind of the environment. People are thinking, well, I can't tell them I don't like to get emails, and it's like, no, we want to work.
We're asking you. Yeah.
And then we might say there are things that we will do this way. Like you're trying to reach the entire company, you're going to do, send an email, do whatever. But then they know, okay, if I get that email, I probably better pay attention to it.
Right. You might even make it something you follow that says, if the subject says need your attention today, please open it.
Right. Yeah. And then of course the key is that it has to actually be like that. How many times do we get emails that say urgent and it's not? And so then it's the boy who cried wolf. When it really is something urgent, nobody pays any attention to it.
And that's really a basic to culture in that you can have your mission statement, your set of values, but if you don't operationalize those into everything that you do every day, they become meaningless.
Right.
And that is really important, something I really help companies with. Take the values they have, and I don't even know if that's a word, operationalize, but I made it up then.
Sounds
if
good.
It isn't. Yeah, it sounds good. Into all of their processes and how they communicate and how they do their work, because culture, to be really successful, is a part of the fabric of your company.
Yes.
It's not something you go offline to do. It's what you do all the time.
Right. And I thought it was interesting in the book you point out that, and I don't remember which one it was, but they mentioned the fact that culture helps them hire, because people know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're like, oh my gosh, I want to work for this company. And
that brand recognition is made at wing night.
Right.
So culture is great for recruiting because people know your brand and who you are. It's certainly important for retention. And it's even important when people leave your company, how they leave their company, because on the outside, they may become your biggest client or customer, or they may return, or they may refer another great employee. There's so many options. You were talking about when you had a job years and years ago, and you had a job and you kept your job. And it was also told to employees, don't burn your bridges.
Right.
Now that goes for the employer as well.
Right. And part of that is because of this whole social media thing. We want people to be saying good things about us, but of course the opposite is also true. We don't want our former employees going out and trashing us on wherever.
Thank goodness I left that.
Oh, I know. I always
tell
that's
people, what Glassdoor does.
Right. Oh yeah. I do LinkedIn training, and for people, one of the programs that I have is for people who are in the job market. And I tell them, you want to find people who used to work for a company and ask them questions. Now, at the very least, they're going to totally ignore you, but you want to find out what they thought, and so if you've reached out to, say, 5 people who used to work at a company and all 5 of them are like, "Nyeh," you know,
Maybe
why
it's
would you
not
want to
the place.
apply?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's
But if
not the
you
place for
get
you.
is from a former employee, oh my gosh, it was a fabulous place to work. Okay. You know, or even if they just say it was time for me to move on, you know, that's okay too. But it's when you get the negatives that you're thinking, you know, maybe I shouldn't be there. You know, because a current employee, of course, they're not going to tell you anything negative because it might come back to haunt them, you know, that whole environment, you know, safe thing.
Unless
But
they're a
yeah,
friend of
it's
a
the
friend.
former employees. Yep. So let's talk more about the power of more because, you know, you know, we want to delve into it. So, you know, mastery. I mean, I love the whole lifelong learning concept. And I love the one of the people in your book that you interviewed that said it's through the company, and it actually should be. You know, how are you encouraging your employees to be lifelong learners?
I'll give you another example. I worked with a company and they had stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was work here and then that work moved to this department and then that work moved to this
Mm-hmm.
department. And sometimes, let's say this department here had nothing to do because they were waiting for the work
Right.
for here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the leaders in the company were very irritated because they say, oh, they'll just sit around, they'll be
Right.
on
We're paying
Facebook.
them to do nothing.
Exactly. My suggestion was have them go find something
Mm-hmm.
that will enhance the work that they do in that department
Right.
and then have them teach that to the other people in the department.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone's learning,
Right.
researching,
Mm-hmm.
learning while they research,
Mm-hmm.
coming back and are engaging with
Mm-hmm.
one another, and let them build a library of things
Right.
they want to change
Mm-hmm.
or teach rather.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That is one way that lifelong learning
Mm-hmm.
is really good. There's somebody else who's not in the book, and he gives a flat fee to everyone in the company to go
Mm-hmm.
learn whatever they want. It doesn't have to be
I love
completely
it.
right.
Mm-hmm.
It could be knitting.
Mm-hmm.
One place, somebody went out and learned how to play the guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked them to come back and do a lunch and learn about
Mm-hmm.
what they learned.
Uh-huh.
And it ended up they built a room for their company band
Oh, cool.
because somebody learned how to play guitar, and then somebody else said, oh, I play the
Mm-hmm.
drums.
Right.
And they kind of outfitted a room where they could go in and jam.
Right. You know, and that was team building. That was,
Yeah,
you know, that was all
absolutely.
sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, and you know, it's and yeah, so it like you said, it might not pertain to what they're doing, but it does. You know,
Well, of
knitting.
course it does,
You
because
know,
you have a
yeah.
whole person come to work.
Right.
You don't,
Right.
the idea of leaving your personal life at home, which was never
Right.
real,
Mm-hmm.
but people were told that. You're a whole person,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to lead that whole person
Mm-hmm.
and everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so lifelong learning is important, and it's certainly important for leadership,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? Because you want to lead. If you want to lead, people are going to follow what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not you can't say do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
No, they want to see you
Mm-hmm.
enriching your life as well, whoever
Right.
you may be.
Mm-hmm.
And book clubs are really good for that.
Right.
Pick a book, take it chapter by chapter, sit down and discuss it. I have a new online course called the Employee Engagement Masterclass, and it is created to be engaging.
Oh, I love it.
There's a short video, and then I give specific questions for discussion, and then discussion 2 weeks later. And it's made for people to work together, not separately.
Right. Right. You know, and it is, you know, I keep coming back to the fact that it's not a waste of time. You know, because you're not sitting there working on your widget, you know, your little thing. You're doing things that are going to help you better work on your widget.
Absolutely. And work with one another. You know,
Right.
collaboration is very important, and many companies, people don't just work on their own. They work with colleagues.
Right.
And the more you create an environment where those colleagues feel comfortable with one another and respect their differences, which is huge,
Right.
the better the end result of what they're working on is.
Right.
Which
You know,
means your clients and customers
right.
are
They're happy
happier,
too.
which means they
Right.
come back, which
Mhm.
means they refer
Yeah.
others.
More money, more
Yeah.
money. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
more money.
Right.
Yeah.
More money.
More money and most success for
Yep.
everyone.
Oh yeah. And obviously this ties right into open-mindedness.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the leaders.
They all
Right.
relate,
Oh yes. Yeah.
right?
You can't, and you really can't have one without all of them. I mean,
Correct.
and I love open-mindedness because it's very hard, especially for CEOs to think, well, I should know it all. People aren't going to like it if I don't know it all. I mentioned my stint in corporate America. Our CEO, now we were a subsidiary of a much, much larger organization, but we still had a lot of employees in one place. And our CEO routinely went to the mail room and talked to the people there.
Hmm.
And part of it, he just liked, he liked them. They were good people, but he knew that they knew what was really going on in the company.
Absolutely.
And now granted, I was the head of corporate communications, and so I talked to him a lot about this, but I'd say, where'd that come from? And he'd say, oh, so-and-so in the mailroom told me about this. So he was, first of all, open-mindedness to come down out of his little ivory tower, and then to go talk to the people in the mailroom to say, tell me what's going on. What vibe are you getting today?
It's very wonderful that the new sexy word for leadership is vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay now for CEOs not to have all the
Right.
answers.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about a gentleman who was a general manager of a
Mm-hmm.
hotel, and they had a shuttle that went back and forth to the
Mm-hmm.
airport, and he would routinely have meetings
Mm-hmm.
with the shuttle drivers to
Because
ask them
they
what
really heard.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like being a parent if you have a kid
Mm-hmm.
and you're driving your kids around
Right.
and they're in the back, still
Mm-hmm.
in the back seat,
Mm-hmm.
right? With their friends.
Uh-huh.
What I
Mm-hmm.
learned was
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What a brilliant idea
Mm-hmm.
to bring that person in or get in the van and say,
Mm-hmm.
what are you hearing this
Right.
week?
Right.
What do people like? What
Mm-hmm.
didn't people like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And get it from the source.
There's that whole TV program, what is it, Undercover Boss?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I've never watched it, but it fascinates me because I'm just real skeptical. I'm like, no, they'd look at
Oh,
you and know who you were.
no, Catherine Munson, who's
Mm,
in the book,
mm-hmm.
the CEO of Fast Signs, and
Mm-hmm.
an amazing human
Right.
being.
Mm-hmm.
She was on that show.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and they go in and they're the everyday worker, and they find out so much,
But she does that all the
Mm-hmm.
time. That's why she has a
Right.
tremendous
Mm-hmm.
culture. I don't think a week goes by that I don't read another article
Mm-hmm.
about another award that they've won.
Mm-hmm.
She really is
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And she is tough with the biggest heart I've ever
Mm-hmm.
seen.
Right. And of course, what's the goal is that you're not having to impersonate somebody. You as the
Yeah,
leader
right.
should just be able to go in and say, tell me what's going on,
Yep.
and
She's
have
very
meetings. Mm-hmm.
She's very transparent.
Mm-hmm.
When they bring out the financial statements, everyone in the corporate office sees them,
Nice.
makes
Nice.
suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And what she's found is even little actions,
Mm-hmm.
like people turning off lights because they
Right.
want to see that utilities bill go
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
The line that says
Right.
utilities, they want
Mm-hmm.
to see that go down.
Right.
It changes their
Mm-hmm.
perspective. So she's
Mm-hmm.
extremely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And that has worked to the betterment
Mm-hmm.
of it doesn't bring more sales, but it reduces their costs,
Mm-hmm.
and there's two sides to every
Right.
business.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the little things are those that really add up.
Absolutely.
What if one of the suggestions is, okay, we have 500 employees and most of them leave their computers on overnight. Well, they go into sleep mode, they do all of those various things, but they're still drawing power. So what if we turned off 490 of those computers? What would the difference be?
Right.
And things like,
Let's try and experiment. That's
yeah.
the other
Right.
idea that I really try to push to
Mm-hmm.
organizations is, barring that it would ruin your reputation,
Right.
try things.
Mm-hmm. You can fix
and
it.
and let your employees know we're going to move in this direction. I know some of you don't like it. I always say talk about the elephant in the
Right.
room.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do it for 3 months. And then we want everyone's feedback, but we need to give it some time,
Right.
3 months, 6 months. It's not going to ruin anything. I would like you to get on board with us and go down this path. And then in 6 months, we'll reevaluate and we will absolutely listen to everything you do. But what I'm asking you to do is to have a positive mindset. I know it's different. I know it's difficult. Again, talk about the elephant in the room, but we're going to go down this road. Some of the employees and I, let's say I'm the CEO, came up with this idea. We think it'll really work. You never know if anything's going to work until you try it. Too many times when I do talk about change management, once you implement, that is not the end of the road. That's the beginning of the next
because
path.
it needs tweaked. It might need major tweaks.
Absolutely.
All those things.
Absolutely. You never know until you really, really use something.
Right. One of the people in your book mentions the fact that they have a suggestion box. And I love that concept because even if you have, the type of workplace where it's a safe environment for people to make, sometimes people still want to be anonymous, all these various things. And of course, the person in the book that talked about it said, we review them at a high level, and it's not a ton, it's not like they're spending 20 hours reviewing these. He said, and then they address all of them.
That was Bill Hageman from Witham, Smith and Brown.
Oh yeah. And what
Great
I
guy.
loved was, and I love the video. Oh my God. I of course had to watch the video. And we'll talk about the video.
An accounting firm that's fun.
Yes. Way fun. They did carpool karaoke.
Yeah.
Folks, check that out just to see that.
Just go look at Witham, Smith and Brown. In fact, I just had one of their employees talk about what it's like from the inside out.
Right. Yeah. And it is, that's where it's, how can you make an accounting firm fun? Really, because people are thinking, well, accountants know.
Well, I certainly wanted to see that.
Oh yeah. And what I loved about his comments on the suggestion box is he said they really addressed the things they could not do. And they said why.
Absolutely.
And that's the big thing, because there are definitely things where it, for whatever reason, can't work. Could be legal reasons, could be money, all sorts of different things. And people are okay if you tell them, this was a really great suggestion, but here's why we can't implement it. And maybe it's just we can't do it right now.
It's because then you've shown them you listened.
Yes.
Ashley Winnett from General Motors, when he was in Australia, they used to have town hall meetings, and he's brought that to the United States now. Right. He's the head of talent acquisition globally. And in the town hall meetings, what they ask is, okay, what rumors have you heard? Let's talk about them.
Yep.
And I talked to another gentleman who tried this with their remote offices. And it took they would have a box, but they would also ask people to do it live,
right?
In a group meeting. And he said it took about 3 meetings before someone was brave enough to stand up, right? And the whole room looked at that person, and then they looked at, the leader who was at the front of the room, the VP, to see how they were going to react. And after that time, people started coming back. It takes time. Everything takes time. You can't do something once and go, it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, that's most important when there are issues. When I worked for that big company, it was a company called ING, a big financial services company. We knew that business units were being closed down. We knew that there were going to be a lot of people who lost their jobs, all these various things. But it was the elephant in the room. Nobody talked about it, and nobody would ask questions about it. And what was worse was management wasn't giving updates. And so, of course, what happened is when there's a void of silence, People
That's the
make stuff up.
worst.
You
Right.
know?
And I always use the example of that's like taking a feather pillow on a mountain and ripping
Mhm,
it open and letting the wind take all the
mhm,
feathers and then saying,
right.
oh, we need to collect
Yes,
them all.
come back, come back.
Yeah, no
Mhm,
way. Yeah.
right.
So that brings us to R, which is
Mhm,
that
right.
reconnection,
Mhm,
which has to do with communication and listening. And that's
mhm,
what we've really been talking
mhm,
about when we talk about being open to new
mhm,
ideas and having new perspectives,
mhm,
not only for leadership, but teaching your workforce how to do that. And
mhm,
there are ways to do that. There's
right.
fun ways to do
Mhm,
that too. I like to have fun when I
right.
work with
Yeah.
groups.
And again, it takes time, it takes patience. Like you said, sometimes people aren't going to open up to you, even with positive things, because well, he doesn't want to be bothered. She's too busy.
Whatever their
Mhm.
history is.
Right. Yeah. All of these various things. And it's not just listening. It's watching body language. I mean, it's all sorts of things. I mean, do you all of a sudden have a whole bunch of people who come in late and leave early? Take really long breaks. What the heck's going on there? Or are they working extra hours? Why? Is it because you don't have enough employees? Also, or is it that there's just, I mean, there's lots of reasons for it, but you have to be paying attention to those things.
Yeah, paying attention
Mhm,
is a really good idea.
mhm,
And we're in such busy
mhm.
lives, we tend to forget to pay attention.
Right.
And I think that's, again, it's not rocket science,
Mhm,
but it's very, very important. That's
right.
back to that deliberate
Mhm,
choice to pay attention.
mhm, right. And we talked about the fact that all of these work at any size company. The bigger the company, obviously it gets a little bit more difficult, but what you have to do is empower your managers, your other, they're paying attention too, and really make sure that like you said, the whole company knows what's going on, because you might not be able to pay attention to what's going on in the mailroom, but whoever manages the mailroom can, and then they can pass it on up, all of these various things.
And then just like coaching, I just talked to somebody the other day and said, coaching shouldn't be for your problem
Hmm.
children.
Right.
Coaching should be for everyone
Hmm.
that you want to do their very
Hmm.
best and succeed.
Hmm.
And everything we're talking about, you just said, this really needs to be taken care of when there's
Hmm.
an issue,
Hmm.
but it's all in the pre-work.
Right.
If you do these types of actions, if you implement these types of
Hmm.
strategies, when everything is moving along
Right.
well,
Hmm.
then I don't like to call them issues anymore. I like to call them
Hmm.
challenges. Then when challenges come up, you already have the
Right.
wherewithal
Hmm.
on how to deal with them.
Right. And you can't plan obviously for everything, but
No,
if you have a good basis,
yeah,
then you can go from there.
exactly. Exactly. And that is what a great culture
Hmm.
is all about.
Hmm.
What are your fundamentals? How do you
Hmm.
act and react every day
Hmm.
in all the situations that you come into?
Hmm. Right.
And that will help you when things go askew,
Hmm.
because it's not if it's going to happen, it's
Right.
when it's going
Right.
to happen.
Yeah.
It's
And
life.
yeah, and there's obviously lots of degrees of how things can go wrong, some of which are controlled by the company and some aren't. I mean, hello,
Correct.
coronavirus is a
Yes.
great example of that.
Yep.
But if you have health standards in place, you've got the policy that says, if you're not feeling good, you're going home. We'll figure out how to do this. Maybe it means you are working remotely for a while. All of those various things, because yeah, the same rules would apply if you had, say, the measles that went around, or like we were saying, weather, all sorts of things. You've got those procedures in place so people go, okay, this, and it helps them, to know, okay, they've planned for this. We've said it numerous times, they care for me. They know that there might be times where I can't be there. It's not going to mean that I lose my job.
Exactly. And if you know that ahead of time,
Hmm.
then when you're not feeling well, you
Hmm.
call in and say,
Right.
I don't feel well. I don't think I
Hmm.
should be there.
Right.
Are there ever going to be people who take
Sure.
advantage? Because I
Mhm.
know there's naysayers out there
Mhm.
saying that right now.
Mhm.
Of course.
Right.
But honestly,
Mhm.
those people, first of all, their
Mhm.
toxicity
Yeah.
will come out in other ways
Right.
and you
Right.
will have to manage
Mhm.
them out of the company.
Mhm.
It's not going to be one thing.
Mhm.
And it's a very small
Mhm.
percentage.
Right.
What will happen more often than not is that the people who know that and understand that and believe you care for
Mhm.
them and can stay home when they're not feeling well and not have to worry about losing their job,
Mhm.
they're going to be with you and work smarter
Right.
and much harder.
Mhm. Oh yeah. And it is about being flexible and saying, okay, and knowing that there will be those people that you have to, I don't want to use the word discipline, but I mean, that's so the people who are like, okay, I'm going home, and they do that every other
But they'll
day.
come out in other
Right.
ways. They
Yeah, because
probably
their
aren't
work is
doing
just
their
not
work
going to, yeah, more
exactly.
than likely they're, and so that way you can say, you know what, you're not doing your work, and
You're
somebody
not a
might
good
have,
fit for this company
right, right,
is the best
and
way.
then you help transition them to something different. Um,
I have talked to many leaders who will have
mhm,
conversations. Ooh, there's an idea with people that aren't a good fit for their
mhm,
company. It could be the kind of work they're
mhm,
doing or whatever, and they will actually help them
right.
through their network
Mhm,
find a
mhm,
job somewhere else that's more suited to their
mhm.
abilities.
Right, right. Yeah, and obviously we're not talking about the truly toxic people. We're talking about the people that, maybe
I'm not
maybe
talking
you,
about somebody who comes
right,
to work drunk because you've
right.
got a
Oh
way to
yeah.
deal with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I mean this might be the person who has small children and really needs that flexible schedule, and your business just doesn't it doesn't have a flexible schedule, but
Or
that Sue's company does. And so you're able to say, let's go talk to Sue.
or you may have somebody that went to school
Hmm.
to be in marketing,
Right.
but they hate marketing.
Hmm.
You know how
Oh
that
yeah.
is. You think
Hmm.
you're going to love it and you
Hmm.
get into it and you go, ew,
Yeah.
I don't like doing
Hmm.
this. Now, sometimes a company, and I've talked to companies who do
Hmm.
this, well, we think you have a very creative mind and you would be really good in our graphics department.
Hmm.
Would you
Right.
like to try that?
Hmm.
Sometimes
Hmm.
you can move. You've been at
Yeah.
a restaurant
Yeah.
before where you have
Hmm.
a server where you
Hmm.
think, oh, if I could only put you to work, you're
Hmm.
phenomenal, right?
Right.
You're a
Hmm.
total package.
Hmm.
And so they might be able to do that, or sometimes they get into an industry and then
Hmm.
they think, I don't really like
Hmm.
it. This isn't a
Right.
good fit for me.
Hmm. Yeah. And of
Could be
course
a
when
lot of
you've,
different
yeah,
reasons.
when you've done that, that comes back to everybody's kind of happy. You've had, they're not going to badmouth you when they leave.
Wow, they
Hope-
helped me find another job. That's how
Right.
great they
Yeah.
are.
And hopefully that company is thinking, ooh, this was pretty cool. They got us a great new employee. So maybe
Exactly.
they'll pay it back, all these various things.
You have
But
no
that
idea.
is, it's all about the communication, and keeping your ears open and your eyes, and all of these various things. And so many companies just really don't do it. So they need to work with someone like you. So Julianne, tell us how they can work with you.
Well, you can see my name there, Julianne Sullivan with no E on the Ann. And if you type in Julianne Sullivan, you will get more ways to contact me
I
than you
love it.
ever dreamed.
Hmm.
My very easy, my website is juliannesullivan.com. Everything
Perfect.
you need is there.
Hmm.
My phone number's at the top of the page. You can
Hmm.
call me, you can email me, you can link with me on LinkedIn. There's a
Hmm.
million different ways. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone about what they're looking to
Hmm.
do and what path they may be able to take. And if I'm not the right person, I may know somebody
Right.
who is.
Yeah, because it comes back to that whole thing. If you're not happy doing it, it's not going to be a good outcome.
Well, I had actually one of the people who's in the book, I was talking to them about doing a program for him. And he said, do you do diversity and inclusion? And he was like, I
Yeah.
really want you to
Hmm.
come, but this is
Hmm.
what we need. And I
Yeah,
went,
this is our
no.
situation.
I
Hmm.
said, no, but I know two
Hmm.
people who will be really
Right.
good. I'll send you
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
But it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
so sweet because it was
Mhm.
like, oh, I want you to come in, but this
Yes.
is what we need
Mhm.
right now. And it was like, well, that's not
Right.
me.
hmm And you didn't try to force it. I mean, that's the other thing. How many
No.
times have employees, have consultants, whatever, will do it to make them happy?
Oh my gosh, when I first started
hmm
speaking, I used to say, I can speak on anything
hmm
except algebra. Yeah, that's yeah, that was silly. I am a culture
hmm
expert. That's where my research is.
hmm
There are a lot of different topics underneath that, but
hmm
basically it all has to do with, do people get up in the
hmm
morning? I just read an article about a LinkedIn survey where 80% of people on Sunday night go, oh my God, I got to
It's
go to work on
Monday.
Monday.
hmm
As opposed to, so I always say, people say, what's a good culture? A good culture is people get up in the morning and they're excited about going to work.
Right. Right.
That's a great
hmm
culture.
hmm Right. You've got lots of good resources. You have great books. This is just one book that you have written. So I encourage people to check into the others. And it is about having those conversations, and talking to people and saying, what do we need to do? Because let's be honest, no company is perfect. They can all be improved. And then it improves everything else.
Well, and culture is a lifelong
hmm
journey.
Right.
All right. So even if
hmm
you have a great culture, you
hmm
still have to keep finding
hmm
new ways.
Right. Yeah, because technology changes. Great example.
Everything
People
changes.
can work from home much easier than they could even 5 years ago.
One of the people in the book, Robert Glazer,
hmm
he has all remote workers.
Wow.
And his company is
hmm
growing. I think he grew
hmm
300% last
Right.
year.
Right. And yeah, so it can be done. It's just how to keep your open mind, how to be learning how to do it, how to listen, and really check with those people who are in the trenches. They're the people who are going to tell you what's going on. And long gone are the days of the yes men. Yeah, oh
Right.
sure, Julianne, sure, we'll do it that way. And kind of rolling their eyes and yeah, right. Well, Julianne, we are at the top of the hour. So what final thought would you like to leave everyone with?
Geez, one final
One
word.
final thought. I know, I know.
Listen more today.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been so much fun and I'd love to chat with you again because this is, I think, one of the absolute most important things for any company, any size company, volunteer organizations, like we said, your family even, are you paying attention to what your kids are saying? And all of these various things. And so, look forward to chatting with you again. But until then, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a great conversation with Julie Ann Sullivan, and everyone have a great day.
Been my pleasure. Thanks, Deb.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.